money's gone. You buy new car, that money's essentially gone, or it's devaluing, you're losing value. You're basically taking your money out of the bank and setting it inside a house.
Equity.
You know what I mean? Equity, of which over time, it's going to raise in value. It's not going to diminish. It's not going to stay the same.
That's something I actually didn't understand. Like literally in 5 years, say you put $100,000 down on a house. In 5 years, if you're like, I don't want the house or whatever, you literally guaranteed, no matter if the market went up or down, you can pull that 100 out.
Yeah, and that's
so it's
what
basically like
understand.
the bank. It's Tom.
It's Jake.
You already know.
It's pretty spot on. All right, ready?
I know you guys have probably thought we retired from this thing, but we are back.
We are back, baby.
Back from the future.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
But I mean, it's a good thing because naturally it's not like we're just taking a vacation. It's because we're literally working.
Doing a lot. We're doing a lot right now. And we just couldn't get to some episodes over what?
I tried to do a filler episode, but then, in the last week, we've literally been like, we'll maybe touch on it, but we've been very much like, it's kind of hard. Like I think I mentioned in my like kind of little filler episode, like to come out here and record a bunch, it just sometimes doesn't line up. But we are back for another quick take.
Yes, we are. And today we're going to talk about scared money don't make money.
You mean doesn't, right?
Yeah, doesn't make money. So I posted something on my Instagram. I said, scared money don't make money. Because I myself am in the middle of a big financial purchase, kind of risk. And it's like, I had to tell myself like, scared money don't make money, which is the phrase. And a couple people on Instagram doesn't, with the little asterisk, trying to be grammar police. And it's like, you're an idiot. Go use Google. The phrase is don't. It's not doesn't make money. And so anyways.
Yeah. And then I guess to distill that phrase, I think that would be kind of something we can dive into because both of us throughout the length of our film careers, but like even kind of diving into like, I mean, you're very much into real estate investments. I know you've got like crypto and Robinhood. I don't know how far we're going to dive into. We'll see where this convo goes, but we both have made pretty big purchases from locations, gear, houses. And businesses. I think this is just kind of like an episode to talk about like, because some of you guys listening, watching might have some financial capital where you're like, do I buy a set of lenses? Do I buy a camera? Do I buy a house? And we've navigated a few of those things. So this is kind of an episode. I do feel like I follow a few of these channels online and I feel like we have to kind of say, this is not financial advice, right?
This is not.
It is.
This is just, it's not, this is not financial advice. This is just stories from our lives
100%.
Of, basically instances of
just avoiding that comment of like, my life savings, I put it on Doge. It's like, hey man, that's not on us.
Exactly. So,
but I think something too that maybe just diving into it is the housing market. And I know this is not related to film, but as filmmakers, I mean, naturally you can look at this as what we're about to say as your own house, and it's not film related, but maybe you're looking to get into some commercial real estate or your own first house, and just. This is something that I just did 6 months ago. You're in the process of doing now. And as you know, in 2022, the market is super crazy right now.
Yeah, the market, I mean, homes in LA specifically and anywhere are going above asking, but in LA, like are going for over 300,000 and asking over the asking price right now, which is absurd.
Pretty ludicrous. I remember having a combo with my dad when my realtor first told me that back in like June when we started looking in 2021. I was like, excuse me?
Yeah.
What's that like one meme where the one like white dude's like, his eyes like blink.
He's blinking. It's just like, I
was like 200.
But it's just absurd to even think like when you're looking on Zillow, Redfin, Realtor, whatever you're looking at, and you see 1.5, you have to like if for example, if you're looking at a house that's 1.5 million in LA, you have to just automatically look at that number as like at least 1.7. Like nothing less.
200K over is kind of the new standard. So if your budget say was $1 million and that's your line in the sand, you kind of have to adjust your budget to like maybe $699 or $799, knowing it's going to climb in sort of a bidding war and end at your budget. So
100%.
I mean, I guess we'll kind of use this front end to kind of maybe share some wisdom that I've definitely learned by listening to a lot of like, different like indicator and like kind of podcasts about the market. And a lot of people kind of have this idea of like, oh, well, maybe I'll just wait right now because it's just going to cool off. Like the 2008 crisis, that was kind of all inflated and it kind of started to regularize. But basically, I really do feel like what's happening right now is simply a supply issue. And the supply issue isn't something that you can snap your fingers and it's like, oh, cool. 1 million homes were built last night. The prices are now going to be all regular. Like after that '08 crisis, I read a statistic that I think to like kind of keep up with the population of the United States, like literally like for the sake of this explainer, I might be off by a little bit. They were making like say 500,000 new homes every year. And that was kind of like the amount they needed to make for everybody in the United States. And then after the '08 crisis, they're like, yo, pump the brakes. Let's just make 100,000 a year. So for the last like 10 to 12 years, we've been making far less homes. And now that we're kind of in this weird time financially in the economy and everyone's ready to buy a home, there just isn't that many homes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So, I mean, going into the, since we're kind of on the topic of homes, purchases, real estate, whatever, we'll just start off with that and my first purchase and when I first got into real estate. Because for those that don't follow me closely on social media, I own a bunch of real estate, a bunch of various houses, property, land, etc. I think in total 5 different properties. And how I got into my first property and house was simply because I, as a filmmaker who's bouncing back and forth between LA for work, where I rented an apartment, in Arizona, where I want to live and did like live, I was bi-statal, however you say that. I wanted to buy a house. And so I had a bunch of money saved up and I bought a house. But I think I just knew real estate was a good game to get in and it was a good way to spend my money to kind of start building a stable financial future for myself. Whereas like a lot of people early on, like I think I was 25, right, when I bought the house, a lot of people might have, let's say my down payment on that house was like, I think 60,000. Someone that might have 60,000 saved up in their bank account might go, who's a filmmaker or a creative, oh, I'm gonna buy a new camera. I'm gonna buy a set of lenses. I'm gonna buy this.
It's kind of like the biggest shortcoming, I feel like.
Yeah. And they're not thinking about the future and how they need to start setting up, things and businesses and investments in place to like create a stable financial future for yourself. And, and instead of buying like this dope ass car or whatever, like I was like, hey, I'm going to buy a house. That is a smart grown up thing to do. And it really was the catalyst for what ultimately became like a new business venture for me. And it became super lucrative and just led into, really a real estate rabbit hole, of which now I own a bunch of properties, and it's what started the film locations that we have. And like, just so I don't know. I think that's like a great place to start. But again, although I had all that money saved up and I bought that house, I mean, it was still very scary at 25 to have like, I've just been saving for a long time now to make this big purchase and see all that money like leave your bank account. Right. But I think what a lot of people also kind of need to understand about real estate or buying a house is you're not buying like a thing in which that money's just gone, right? You buy a TV, money's gone. You buy a new car, that money's essentially gone, or it's devaluing, you're losing value. You're basically taking your money out of the bank and setting it inside a house.
Equity.
You know what I mean? Equity, of which over time, it's going to raise in value. It's not going to diminish. It's not going to stay the same.
That's something I actually didn't understand. Like literally in 5 years, say you put $100,000 down on a house. In 5 years, if you're like, I don't want the house or whatever, you literally guaranteed, no matter if the market went up or down, you can pull that 100 out.
Yeah, and
so
that's
it's
what
basically like
understand.
The bank is now your house,
right.
But instead of like a scary low interest rate, which you're making pennies on the dollar, you're actually growing because, I mean, literally just to give some context, I bought my house in August, and in the last 6 months, it's literally gone up $75,000 in value.
Crazy.
I mean, obviously
the market's so nuts right now.
So maybe that's not like a litmus test forever, but literally just that money
but I can speak to that because like, since 2000, and what was that 15, when I told myself I'm going to buy a house, I told myself I'm going to buy a house every year for the next 5 years. So from 2015, when I bought the first one, from 2015 to 2020, I bought 5 cents. I did that. But like the reason I did, or looking back now, those 5 properties have all of them have increased tremendously in value from what I bought it for. One of them, of which I ended up selling, increased over 90,000, sold that, made a bunch of money. The one that I still have right now, Hudson, I bought it for $205. It's worth over $400. The house I live in here, I bought for $550. It's worth over $1 million now.
Yeah.
Derek's house next door, we bought for $485. It's worth over $600 now. Eclectic West bought for $140. It's worth over, I think, close to $300 now.
Yeah.
So it's like you're talking about 4 to 5 different properties, all within the last 5 years, increasing hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's like and that's money that at any point in time I can sell and will get back. Like again, I'll get that money back. Plus I've made money with it just sitting equity in a house and a property. And so I've always kind of tried to touch on that, preach on it without also like sounding, I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert on real estate. I don't know all the ins and outs. I just know that's how people build wealth and 100%. A stable financial future.
And I think it's worth mentioning too, because I know a lot of people watching and listening to this might be like, oh, well, I don't have that money. And that's totally good and great. We are just kind of trying to plant the seed in your mind that, as you start to, make money from the gigs and start to kind of save some wealth, because the idea of working in the film industry is you're going to make some money and put it away to save towards something, is basically just planting the seed to opposed to putting that 60 on a Red or Helium or an Alexa. There is strategy in that, perhaps if you have ties to rental houses or a lot of resources. But if you're just thinking about buying that for your own production company or your own projects, you're going to see a devaluation on that camera almost instantly. I think the funniest story, and I don't know if I've touched on in this pod or just in conversations with you, but there was a moment in 2012 that right before the Red Scarlet came out.
Yeah, that's right.
The Red just Epic MX was literally listed for like $49,000. And overnight, when the Scarlet came out, they realized it was pretty overvalued. They literally moved the value of that camera on the website to $25,000. So overnight, the camera was worth half. So if you had bought that camera 3 weeks ago, it just landed on your porch, you're looking at this, I just spent $49,000. The world recognizes as an asset that's worth $49,000. Within one day, it's worth $25,000.
Yeah,
so,
insane.
I mean, I think the thing about housing is like the value of the house isn't determined by some random company like Red just being like, yo, it's worth this now.
Right.
Like my Helium is now worth a lot less. They just slashed the price of that. Like the housing market, like the house, if we're talking about that, is, I think, just kind of like, I don't know. It just, that value isn't determined by one person. It's just observed by the whole market. If like your neighbor's house sells for this, it's going to raise yours. It's like, there's a lot of things that keep the value where it's at, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And I think you finally kind of got to experience that now with like your first home purchase.
Yeah.
And, seeing like, wow, this is a big purchase. And maybe you can touch on it being scared, like scared money don't make money, right? Like you lost out on a few houses. This one came up and you're like, yo, screw it. And you offered well above to make sure you landed it. And it's like, it's scary to like spend all that money and see all that money leave your bank account. But to understand like, yo, there's a bigger play here. It's like, one, now you own something. You're not paying someone else's mortgage. That money's not going out the window.
Yeah.
That money is still your money. It's just sitting in a house. It's growing in value. But yeah, it's a scary thing to spend all that money.
100%.
So, I don't know for you if it was like a hard pill to swallow.
I
or
think
if it
we
was
all
like,
kind of, I would imagine, have that number in your like Chase or Wells Fargo account where like if you're sitting above that, no matter if taxes hit or this hits, like you feel like you're in like a safe space. Like I feel this is a good amount for a rainy day. Like however, if you have a savings or whatever. So when you start to tap those accounts and they go below that kind of imaginary line in the sand of like, oh dang, like I've not seen it at this area for a while, it is a little scary. But if anything, it kind of like lights a fire of like, all right, let's keep it moving,
Yeah,
So
I think that's one thing I had heard a fighter did, and I might have touched on this in a previous podcast, but like there was
where he like made sure he had no money.
Yeah, he would make sure like when he got his purse, he would spend it, and probably not stupidly or frivolously, but investing it or whatever, because he would spend that money, and it would keep that fire alive. Like, I got to keep working. I got to keep grinding, doing better, win these fights, because like there is a point in which you get comfortable, and that comfortability can breed laziness, which ultimately is a killer as well of, your growth, whether it's creatively in business. And I've even noticed that in myself. There's, been times where I'm like, yo, I'm pretty comfortable right now. And I have found myself, although I still work hard, I don't work as hard as I used to, if that makes any sense. And it's definitely because like I feel comfortable in a lot of the decisions, investments I've made, and the money sitting in my account or whatever. And so
there's a really good David Bowie reference for that. And I've actually, it's always stuck with me. I could pull it up, but the exact like reference was, you never want to be like, imagine you're standing in the water, right? You never want to be operating like you're in the shallow end. You want to be right in the water where your tippy toes are barely touching the ground. You're barely above the water. Like that is where you want to be operating as a creative person. If you're just standing in the shallow end, like, all right, yeah, this is cool. I can stand, like everything's all good and great. Like you want to be just like kind of right at the precipice where you're drowning. And maybe it's extreme, but the way he described it, I was like, that's cool. Like you kind of want to throw yourself in the fire opposed to just kind of kicking back where, it's like, oh yeah, I'm good back here.
Yeah.
And I've always kind of, and I've probably sound like a broken record. Like I love the mindset of like forcing yourself to figure it out, and like, I think another kind of scared money, don't make money, if we're using that as like the sort of the hypothesis or the underlying tone of all of what we're talking about, like last year, moving your house to a studio.
Yeah.
That was,
gosh.
God, I even look at it now. I'm like, holy shit, how did we like do this?
Yeah.
Like I'm very proud of it. I think it's one of like our biggest accomplishments outside of like our, company here. But it was daunting. I mean, there's videos of us like showing the empty warehouse and like us taping down the floors, and it's like,
it's hard to think.
Holy shit. And it's kind of cool. I mean, sidebar, but like learning that we had to like frame walls and put drywall and finish and wood paneling. Like I actually feel like I could confidently build a house right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
but it was a lot.
Yeah. I'll use that to kind of touch back onto, the first instance of, that scared money, don't make money kind of thing is like buying Honeymoon, the initial Honeymoon before any of the studio stuff started. And this was like the first going to be studio, buying the house in LA, never having opened or run a studio, and just thinking like, I'm about to make this big ass home purchase. I'm about to spend all this time and money decking it out to be rented as, a film location. What if nobody shoots here? And that was like a huge weight on me for a while until it was up and running and started to do well. And then it did well, right? And then it was the catalyst to get the Eclectic West, to start the Barracks, etc. But even then making that pivot again, taking Honeymoon, which was successful at the house, but going like, is it going to work in a studio? Mm-hmm. And now we're spending all this time and money to now lease this warehouse and build it from scratch in a warehouse. And again, it's like, cool, it was successful in this house format. Yeah. But is it going to be successful as like...
Not only that, but it's literally $7,000 a month. And like there was 3 months where we were just constructing it. Yeah. So like every top of the month is like, fuck. Yeah. Excuse my French. Like just like, it was definitely stressful, but like now we're in a position where it's just singing and flying and booking. And it's like so cool to like, literally like, the Lakers were shooting there the other day. It's just like, it's really cool to like step back from the sidelines, be like, wow, like we built this like playground for so many other creative people. Yeah. But it was like, initially probably close to $100,000 collectively. Yeah, like for sure. Furniture, contractor, all the stuff.
Yeah, lease, contractor, materials, furniture, props. Like, we're talking like 100K, maybe
and
more.
This is different than an asset that you own. So unfortunately, there will be a moment in time when that lease does expire. I would love in a perfect world to just renew and have it for as long as we want. So there is, if you're kind of thinking about opening a film location, the locations, unless you outwardly own the house or building, that is not an asset. So this is different, but I do think you can put money into something, though it's a commercial lease, and then leverage the earnings, the rentals and stuff. Because I feel like that has a better return on investment, in my opinion, than lenses that may go out of style, a camera that's no longer sort of the new camera. Like a location, as long as it's dope, it will continue to be dope.
Yeah, I think one thing that I kind of live by is like not like investing into tech, like gear wise, like in terms of like film related stuff, like I think my Helium is now 5 years, I don't know how, 4 years old, and like there's all these new cameras that come out, but I'm not like running out to buy a camera. You know what I mean? I'm not one that's going to invest in like a devaluing asset like that, where there's every year a newer and better thing. I would much rather invest into a location or something like that, where it's going to hold value and can keep flowing and running in that way.
100%.
Same thing with like whether it's starting a business, like a business you can continue to grow and evolve, and it's not like technology that's like falling behind and nobody wants to use anymore or rent, but so Honeymoon was the catalyst, and that led to Eclectic. And again, that was a huge, I've touched on it before. Like that was arguably way more scary than Honeymoon, because it was like so far outside the realm of LA. And that's where I was like, just buying this desert property land and going like, dude, is anyone going to come out here? I think we all
have that like Geppetto in our soul. That's like, you're so caught up in the moment of this is exciting, this is going to work. And then there's that little tiny voice in your head, like kind of reminding you, are you sure? Yeah. And I think more often than not, we listen to that one and like let that check ourselves. I can't tell you how many times like you're so close to pulling the trigger and it's like, wait, maybe it's pump the brakes. And that pumping of the brakes comes from that little voice in your head. So I'm not telling you to ignore that, but definitely there are moments in which you're like, nah, F off Geppetto, I'm going to run it. Yeah. And you just kind of sometimes have to, you know?
Then I think you live and you learn too, because you'll learn from your failures. I mean, we've had a location that's failed and we realize like, hey, you know what? We strayed away from what was successful and tried to do this. This doesn't work in a location.
And like, look, if that one succeeded, we probably would have opened up 3 or 4 more, but that informed our decision to like reinvest in the ones that were working. Right. And you don't know until like you try, essentially.
And you're always going to have moments of failure but you use those failures, to kind of realign and find out what works and put more energy into that. But yeah,
I'm something too that unrelated, but I remember a tweet I read that if you bought a Tesla in 2016 for $60K or put $60K into Tesla stock, you would have actually made like $300K, and then the car would have actually only been worth, I think, like $20,000. Right. So having a fixed asset versus investing, and I don't know, we can maybe use this as a segue into stocks, which I know really not much about, but it was just kind of like the idea of like a camera, like you could put that $60K into a camera. Right. I wonder if you put that same $60K into like red stock or something that you knew could generate more wealth over time, that as that asset depreciates, who knows where that money could have earned you. You know what I mean? I read that somewhere. I was like, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. That's, do you have any plans to get a Tesla?
I've thought about it.
Really? I have
you know what's crazy? Like, I say this and I'm probably going to get one. Dude, gas, not to get all, political, but it's like almost $6 in LA.
That's insane.
I mean, this is maybe a topic for a different episode, but as I've been getting more into photography, I've been enjoying just kind of actually exploring my city of Pasadena and driving around and like taking photographs. And there was one day I just drove around for an hour in Pasadena, drove over here, took a cool photo. I literally went through like a quarter of a tank of gas. I was like, dude, that was probably like $20 of gas. Yeah. And I read online that like when you charge your EV, like Tesla or whatever, from 0 miles to a full charge is about $3 worth of electricity.
Damn, that's
versus
crazy.
A full tank for me and my van. When we were doing all those errands, I probably spent like $200 in gas.
Gas for when we were building the studio.
I've thought about it. So yeah, it is that
we're gonna get. I'm just trying to decide. Me and Chanel have been talking about it, definitely because of the gas prices and just in general. Like
you run that Lucid play.
That's what we're trying to. I really want a Lucid because it's like just like everyone gets Tesla, and I want to get something a little different. And Lucid is so clean, and they're like a better company in my opinion. In terms of
my only hesitation with Lucid is you go to their site, they got one car. And like if you go to
They got a couple.
I thought it was just the Air.
No, they got Lucid Dream, Lucid Air. Okay. I think they got 3.
But I just feel like Tesla, it's like buying an iPhone, right? You know that there's an infrastructure and a company and a team behind it. But if you bought like a Huawei, you're like, what the fuck is this? Where, not to say Lucid is Huawei, but it's like, I feel like if you were to get a Tesla, they have superchargers. They have like the infrastructures.
That's true. That's true.
Like, you could be in the middle of Nevada and you're like, all right, where's the supercharger at? But like, where's the Lucid charger? Like, who knows, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking speaking of scared money don't make money, I'm thinking of one, we want to get a Tesla, but we were thinking about getting it so it would be our LA car. But then while we're not there, because this would be after we get our house, obviously we need a place to put the car, but then like renting it on Turo and trying to have other people pay our car note every month by just renting it on Turo, because we're not always in LA. So if it's just sitting over there, then we could just have people rent it and basically pay for us to own this car.
Do you want to hear a crazy Turo Tesla story?
Oh no. Sure.
I'm not going to name the person. I'll tell you after we record.
All right.
He is an AC we work with a lot. don't say his name, but he also like directs, he does like a lot of things. And he was telling me, cause I do like this worst day ever podcast, and he didn't record this story. He's like, yo, here's all my stories. Which one should I do? And he did a different one.
Did he do the absolutely insane one?
Yeah.
Okay,
And that one hasn't come out yet, but he told me this other story. I'm like, holy crap, that happened to you. So he was working with a rapper. This won't go on too long, but he was working with a rapper, and apparently the rapper didn't have insurance. He's like, hey, person, can you go rent a Tesla Model X with your insurance? The guy had insurance, and we're going to use it for a rap video, and I'll give you $1,000 just for kind of handling that. The guy's like, yeah, sure. Rented the Tesla X. They're shooting the video. They were inside. They're in like Compton. They had a drive-by shooting, and the Model X got shot up, bullet holes all along the side.
No way.
And they went out, and apparently the Tesla, when something happens, it records at all different angles, and there's footage of the car just getting lit up, and like the guy had to go to the owner, be like, yo, like your car got shot when it was parked in front of my house. And apparently it was like $60,000 in body work. I mean, the insurance covered it, but like just a Tesla Turo story that happened to him.
Oh my gosh. That's a good point.
Word of the wise. Yeah. But
wow.
No, I've thought about it for sure. Just with, I know this was kind of more, I mean, because that is a big play too. Those cars are pretty expensive.
No, yeah. I mean, yeah, it depends on when you get.
Because I put a pre-order on a Bronco, and then I just canceled it. Like, it was going to arrive in 2024, and the thing gets like 17 miles a gallon. I'm like, that's a stupid car to get right now. I kind of got like into the hype of like, oh, it'd be cool to like go do like photo trips, and we can like go up to some cool place up in Big Bear off-road, go to these far off remote locations. But I was like, you know what, maybe I'll just rent a truck for that. Like, it just doesn't, that does not sound like a daily driver for me. So
what's something besides the house for you that was like a big scared money don't make money kind of play? Like
I think for me, I mean, it's kind of a money play, but also just a career play. And I've touched on it before, like literally making the decision to stop shooting, like just advertising myself as a cinematographer was like kind of the creative kind of big play, but also like literally buying like a $30,000 to $50,000 like Steadicam when I've only taken a couple lessons and workshops. Like, who knows? Like, maybe I would have gotten that thing. And there was a moment in my head, I'm like, dude, is this just like some random hobby that I'm going to just forget about? Or is this going to be something I actually want to do? And I kind of had to check myself. I'm like, no, I really enjoy this. It's fun. But there was definitely a moment of like, dude, I just bought like $50,000 worth of, and I know it just said like, don't buy gear, but this was like very much for my like career, like what I want to do. And it's like, what if no one called me? What if everyone just kind of used their other Steadicam ops, and I'm just sitting with all this gear in my garage? So and it worked out. I've been doing it a lot, and it's a ton of fun. But yeah, initially it was just like a big pivot. It's like kind of like a big, skirt.
No, but that's good that you did it. And what was there anything in your head that was like where you were almost on the brink of like, nah, fuck it, I'm not gonna do this, and like where you were about to back out? Or were you
back then, like the companies were doing good. This is actually, I think, even before, or no, this is right after Prism. But I had like a classic car, and I basically, my like play of getting it, because I think the first rig I got was $28K cash. I ended up like having to buy like the camera card and batteries and stuff, but just the actual like rig was like $30K. And I had like a classic car, it was like a Datsun 280Z.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I was like, you know what, I'm going to sell this car and just use that money to like really like buy, like fund most of it. And there was definitely a moment of like, oh man, I kind of love this car, but I was like, nah, this is definitely not the play. So I just sold the car, and like that, once I sold the car, I was like, you know what, there's no turning back. And I just used that cash to like fund most of that purchase. But yeah, definitely a couple of moments where I remember even just being in my apartment, and I'm like reading like the Steadicam handbook, and Jordan's like, what are you reading that for? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like doing this now. And she was like, what? Like, that's crazy. I've definitely had that like kind of conversation with like even just like fellow DPs I've gone to school, like, oh wow, you're doing that now. But it's a ton of fun. I love it. But definitely was like a big like risk, So.
I like that. I'm trying to think like some of mine outside of, I mean, all of mine have really been more real. Let me ask you this: is there a financial risk, just because I think we can learn from it, that you did that actually did not pan out, where you actually spent a considerable amount of money and you're like, you know what, that was a bad play? That's a good one. I'm trying to think.
It can be even like something really on the smaller scale. It doesn't have to be like a big like what do you call it, real estate play or nothing like that. It could just even be, I mean, we've touched on like gear regrets, but I just wasn't sure if there's something you're like, I think the only time is buying that Canon C, I think 200 at the time. I mean, that was at the time for me, that was a good chunk of change. I think it was like 15 grand. And I kind of bought it on the hopes that this would get me this like,
independent feature film job that was buzzing. I was talking with this guy and they wanted me to DP, and then the project fell through and I was like stuck with this camera, and I kind of bought into the idea I need this camera to shoot this thing, and it wasn't even locked in yet. And that was by far like, the dumbest thing I've ever done in terms of like investment wise and gear career wise. But outside of that, I feel like I've, all the big plays I've made have really kind of turned out well for me. Especially most of them have been either like starting one of the businesses that we started together or investment in real estate. And it's hard to go wrong in real estate. It can go wrong, but like, it's pretty hard to like mess that up. So
I wish I knew more about it, but I feel like a lot of people have been like really itching at like where, not even in terms of like assets of houses, but like crypto, NFTs, and like that's definitely kind of like the Wild West. And I feel like I couldn't speak on it with much clarity. I feel like I'm still very much figuring it out, but maybe we can get a guest on one day to kind of like
talk about it.
Because actually
I would like to learn a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Actually.
I don't know him personally, but it'd be sick to get like Mason on, or I know he had like some great success with it, but there's someone who's like kind of 1 degree away from us, like actually like hit critical mass and sold, like, I think he's done pretty well with it. So that'd be cool. That's like a kind of like a whole different frontier of like investing, because you're kind of buying some digital art that could have value.
The only thing crypto related, I have like a little bit of investment in crypto on, like Coinbase and whatnot, but I don't have like, I haven't invested in NFTs or any of that stuff. And I'm mostly into the stock side of things. It's like AMC, Apple, Lucid, et cetera, et cetera.
Because I think the thing to consider too, if you're just sort of listening, watching, and you're like, you know what, I've got my savings, I think I'm just going to keep this in my savings. Something to consider, and I realized this very recently, is say you have $100,000 in the bank. Next year, that'll only be worth probably about like 90,000 or 96,000. Like every day the dollar is actually devaluing. So why not have that 100 work for you versus actually, interest rates actually at one point in the history of the United States were pretty good. The banks wanted to hold your money. Now it's like fractions of a cent on a dollar, where you may make some little bit of interest, but actually like that money just sitting in one account, like a savings account for a few years, with the way the inflation is right now, that 100 is not working the same amount. It'll be worth like, it'll have gone down in value.
What are the interest rates right now? Like if you have like $100K sitting in a savings account, what's the interest on that? Are you getting like $1 every month? Or like,
it's so bad. Yeah. So, you could put your money into like an S&P 500, and it's just sort of like a safe stock. You
IRA.
could do something more aggressive. Like you can be doing like Tesla or Apple, where it's a little more volatile, but you should definitely have your money working for you. Because I feel like if your money's just sitting in an account, if you want to like play it safe, like, I'm going to save it, in theory, you're actually losing money by doing that.
That's one thing I try and, keep in mind too, and remind Chanel about, because I think it's easy to get comfortable with seeing all that money in your account and not wanting it to leave. But like if you're taking that money and smartly investing it and putting it into other avenues in which can grow or earn things, then that's smarter than just leaving it in your account. But it's easy to get comfortable just seeing that number in your bank account, rather than when you open your bank account, it's not there. You know what I mean? So
I feel you, for sure.
Mentally it's just different, but it's like the money's still there. You just have it in this investment. And I even need to take some of the money that I have sitting in the bank and figure out what I want to do with it. But that's sometimes the hard thing, is figuring out what you want to do with it. Because you don't want to just like make a snap decision and invest it or throw it into this thing without like, so, because there are like, even if you were to like put a bunch of money into an IRA, like you then can't pull that money out, because then you're going to get penalized for that. So not making rash decisions in that way. But for me, the safe bet, I've always just done real estate, and that's why I have a bunch of different properties and stuff, because it's like I've just always have seemed to win with that. And I know that's listening to just different podcasts and people, like that's how how people get rich and wealthy, is just real estate and just property growths over the years. And you can also turn it into a business, whether it's Airbnb or film location, or rent it out
100%
to a long-term tenant, and they're paying your mortgage for you and you don't even have to pay it. And so I have other real estate plays I want to dive into. Like I want to do a duplex or a quadplex. Cool. I want to do, at some point, we talked about it, that it might be down the road like 5 years, I would love to own a motel. but like
actually like run it like the
like an actual buy a motel and run it, but like every
Ruth from Ozark.
but yes, exactly. But like every room's got like a unique look and style, like, and like we were talking about, because Chanel's mom and dad have a company, Honey Bears, and it'd be cool to do like the Honey Bear Lodge and do like a motel somewhere up in the woods and have like the Honey Bear Lodge, and each room's got like a, you know, kind of do it maybe, you know, just something along that lines. We've talked about that before, and we have a lot of ideas. They mostly all investment wise revolve around
one of my
real
ideas
estate.
is it's definitely like a kind of 5-year plan, because I still have to get married and do a honeymoon, and there's still some stuff that needs to happen beforehand. But I would love to own like 5 to 10 acres out in like Yucca Valley, Joshua Tree. I love the desert. I always find it's very like recharging. It's kind of like hitting the factory reset on your soul. I feel like it kind of like you come back and you're like ready to work.
Right.
But I do enjoy it out there, and I have a lot of my best ideas like when I'm just kind of like have no service and I'm just like out there.
Right.
And right now I pay like $1,500 for this like creative space where I record a lot of videos for Tropic Color and, you know, Prism. And I was like, it would be really cool to have a house that either I buy or just build from scratch. And then on the other end of the property, not even attached, is this kind of like 750 square foot, 1,000 square foot, just like long room, kind of like you've seen it.
Right.
And it literally just is kind of like has all my gear there. And if I ever want to just like go out and record a bunch of videos, call it like the creator compound. And the house just makes me money and pays for everything, pays that. And it literally is just on Airbnb or rental out. But then on the far end of like the property, just have this like really cool kind of super ultra modern like creator space where I have all my C-stands, my camera. So if you were ever like, hey, go record a couple sound bites, I would just go out for the weekend and just like bang out a bunch of stuff.
Crazy.
Because right now it's just like, dude, I'm like $1,500. It's worth it because I'm like able to leverage so much content opposed to like filming in like a small room about this size. But it's like, dang, like that's just kind of like money that's just going away. And there's no value in that, like other than like in terms of like actually owning it. I can never own that space. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's kind of like a far off kind of, would be cool to have.
That's cool. That's dope.
We'll see. But yeah, I mean, that kind of, unless you have anything else.
I mean, we could go on and always talk about stuff, but I think that's a good
Bitcoin, everybody.
Bitcoin. Dang, I got AMC still. I'm still.
I mean, literally, the owner of our agency, literally, like, kind of when we were linking up with him, he was kind of giving us some insight that like there's a reason why like the top 1% billionaires of the world are buying millions and millions of dollars of Bitcoin like every day.
Yeah.
Like he was hinting at, who knows if it's true or not. We'll maybe have to check back in this episode in 10 years, but like he's like, yo, that's the future of money. Yeah. So who knows?
We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know. Not financial advice, that's for sure.
No, for sure.
All right. Is that it for this episode?
Yeah,
Quick
I mean,
take?
if you guys like the kind of business, I know, us talking about houses is like far off the topic of like a film podcast, but we've tried to keep our ear to the comments, and a lot of you seem to really like the kind of like 1 degree away from being a filmmaker is like the business and money plays, and these are just things we've done. You know, take it with a grain of salt. But if you enjoy sort of stuff of this nature, maybe we can kind of do a future spin-off episode on like maybe opening up an S Corp or getting an EIN number, or like, you know, just different things related to kind of like becoming an entrepreneur, you know?
Love it. All right. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Please share, guys. You know, help spread this podcast as much as possible. And we'll see you on the next one.